Everyone loves the jingle. So welcome everyone to the NAV Lab. That's the name we're toying with right now. Today we have Gavin Monjaras, top agent on the team, mentor. I've learned a ton about sales and real estate from Gavin over the years. So hopefully going to get some gold today in our conversation. Gavin, why don't you introduce yourself to the world? Maybe talk about a little where you're from, and then how you got started in real estate.
Yeah, so started real estate back in 2011 in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Did it for a year. Enjoyed it. Wanted to get out of Cheyenne, though, so I wanted to move to Denver. So I found a job through my contacts in oil and gas. So I moved down to Denver and was in sales with a private oil and gas firm for a couple of years, and then realized that I wanted to get back into real estate but didn't know anybody in Denver, and I knew my business wouldn't flourish like it did in Cheyenne because I didn't know anybody. So it was kind of scary to think about that possibility. Came across a company that was obviously you guys are all familiar with iHomes, that had that relationship with Zillow, and so that was something that was very important to make in my decision. Was there was a platform for me to succeed without knowing anybody with lead generation. So that was the biggest step for me, getting back into real estate, and then obviously getting to me where I'm at today.
So started at iHomes, and then you were one of the first people to work there, right?
Correct. Yeah, okay. I was the first agent. Justin and Isaac being the owners, I was the first agent with them. So
cool. How did you meet Justin and Isaac?
Someone came to work for me in oil and gas, and Erin Adesso.
Okay.
So she worked for me for a little bit in oil and gas, and when she left the oil and gas company, I had mentioned to her that I may be on my way out, and she said, a friend of mine is starting a real estate company, you should go talk to him. And so I went and had an interview with Justin and Isaac, realized that they would be heavily lead based, and I'd have an opportunity to get in front of people. So it was an easy decision. Cool. To get into it at that point.
I mean, you'd been doing real estate before, though, I guess. Uh-huh. How did you how did you get that role?
It started because I was the only one that had any experience in real estate.
Yeah.
Justin and Isaac were brand new too, so
yep. Everybody
was kind of learning as they went along. But being that we had so many brand new real estate agents that had never done real estate before, they wanted somebody with some experience that had the skill set to go out and close on listing appointments. But not only that, listings are so much more work than buyers are.
Yeah.
And that's what most people don't realize. Everybody thinks that listings are gold. They're easy. You put a sign up. You can do whatever you want that weekend. The home's going to sell itself, obviously, in Colorado. And it's quite the opposite. So at iHomes, we had so many brand new buyer agents. We didn't want anybody handling listings because they couldn't necessarily provide the highest level of service.
Yeah.
So we took that, on our own, and Justin and I handled all of the listings, for the first 12 months. And then once buyers agents became experienced, developed that skill set, we were able to train them on the listing process. Then we'd allow them to take their own listings at that point. That's how that came about.
Cool. And I think, since we've been here, I've talked to you and called you a number of times to get some ideas on listings, listing appointments, things like that. One thing that's interesting is, you've taught some classes, you've been on camera quite a bit, talking about kind of your sales process. And for me, as just like a third party looking in, it's like a brand of honesty. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. Like, you're very upfront and honest with the people that you work with. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that Russ and I were talking about on the last podcast, is he was saying that he the way he described it was just don't lie. Which is just be honest, right? Mm-hmm. But the way he was you just have to tell people straight up, maybe your expectations are unrealistic, mm-hmm. or I know you've said sometimes of hey, do you want to work together? Right? You
Yeah.
ask people straight up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like, do you want me to follow up with you type thing?
Yeah.
And you just look them right in the eye and like have them tell you like, no, I don't want you to follow up with me.
Right.
Or since they're on the spot, maybe, you're making the sell right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing I wanted to kind of get into. I know it's kind of changing the subject a little bit, but on the buy side, when you go and meet a buyer, what do you think like really sets you apart in your process?
Sure, and to talk a little bit about what you just spoke about, I think giving people the opportunity to say no to you kind of eliminates some of that awkward interaction in the beginning.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to assume the close and assume that everybody wants to work with them, but in reality, a lot of people already have a real estate agent that they trust. So they may be just looking to get that showing in and get out the door and get away from you as quickly as they can. So if you give them the opportunity to be honest with you up front, I think they trust you a little bit more. And then, like I said, if they are going to be that person that's never going to call you again and you're going to be wondering, they may tell you, well, actually, yeah, I do have a real estate agent that I'm close with, and so I will be working with them. So I'd like to get that answer out of them. But the only way that you really get the truth out of anybody that you first meet is if they trust you enough to do that. So that's a big part of my process, is earning trust and building trust through that first appointment. And that's by not being like everybody else. Everybody knows real estate agents want to close homes and get people under contract and collect those checks. So any question that you typically ask to get there can typically be, perceived as salesy. If I ask somebody, are you pre-approved? It's a fair question, and it's something that they probably need to work on. If they're not pre-approved already, they probably need to work on that process, right? But at the same time, if I ask them that, it can come off as salesy. So I typically like to lead the conversation in another direction and let them ask me at the end.
Yeah.
What's the next step in the process? Oh, great question.
Cool.
So
that's So I would say our approaches are probably very different because we're very different people.
Yeah.
I would say you're definitely a better salesman than I am, even though like you said, you're not trying to be salesy, or you don't want to come off as salesy.
Right.
So when I'm in a showing, I definitely lean towards like, I just like BS with the person a lot of times, but my goal in the back of my mind is like, I want this person to like me, trust me, and want to work with me. By the end of the showing, I want to have a relationship with this person.
Yep.
I think personality-wise, I'm a relator, so I'm always trying to relate to people, telling stories or whatever. But I've had people in the past, like, to your point of like, you might not ask them if they're pre-approved because it's like, can you buy this house?
Yeah.
Like, are you qualified? And I don't ask that stuff either, ever. And a lot of times, like, we'll end the showing and I haven't asked them anything of like, what are you looking for in a house? Like, it's just been this like hangout type thing.
But they ski, they snowboard, the names of their dogs, all that stuff.
Right? Which like has its place, but I've had to find like a fine line of like, there are these questions I ask every single time, like how long you been looking for, are you renting right now, whatever, while getting to know them. But the point I was going to make is like, there's been people where I didn't get to those questions or whatever, and like I said bye, and that was it. That's the last time I saw them. Or I've got feedback on like, well, we liked you, but like you didn't really get to know what we were looking for in a house, right? Or you didn't ask if we were pre-approved or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's like there's an art to and really the sale for us, I think, is that like first showing, which is something that I think that you're super good at. Just knowing your business and knowing like your success. Another thing that I want to talk to you about a little bit too is like you've kind of become this like luxury agent. You've done a lot of really expensive deals, and I wanted to get your thoughts on, is that something that you really wanted to do, is like transition into higher price points, things like that? Or do you think like your skill set just translates better to those type of clients?
Great question. And it was something that for years I've wanted to get into the luxury market.
We all do, right?
Yeah. I mean, everybody looks at it as, how much time am I putting into this? How much am I getting paid, right? If I can sell higher valued homes. I make more money. Okay. So everybody has this perception like it's so much better because of that. And everybody wants to do more. But and we're heavily lead based, right? We're provided opportunities by Zillow, and we never know exactly what price point it's going to be. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of luck of the draw there. So it just took time, and over time, I focused on leads that were above 800,000 price point. But I struggled, even though at the time I thought I had that skill set and I was good enough to do it. The conversion rate on those leads were still low, mm-hmm. and it's not something that I can even teach at this point. I can't go out and tell somebody, here's how you get a luxury client. Here's what I did. I can't tell you what it is. It took time. So it took years of experience before I was comfortable staring someone in the face that's purchasing a $4 million house. I just didn't know how to do it before. So, and in sales, there's a level of, being able to look eye to eye with somebody. And when someone's purchasing a $5 million home and I can't afford a $5 million home, how am I able to look eye to eye with them? So it took transactional experience, and it took years of, practice and being in front of those people, and then understanding what they're there to do, understanding that, most of them are not there to waste any time. And then I kind of got, comfortable with it just, again, through experience and through those conversations. But could I go out there and mentor somebody and teach them exactly how to do that? No, it's just going to take time.
Yeah.
It really takes just time.
Yeah. And that's, it almost is like, it could be some personality mm-hmm. to that too. And that's something that's really hard to teach someone else, is like, how are you going to make your personality like mine, right?
Yeah.
How are you going to say the right things, every step of the way, right? Especially with a client like that. Yeah. And I think that gives you this level of pressure too.
Yeah.
With the price point. Yeah. What were you saying?
Well, you talked about being relatable,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always been that way too. In sales, I've always been more comfortable with people face to face. Felt like I could, lead conversations and have conversations and talk about things, and that's great. And one of the things that I noticed about the upper levels of transactions or luxury real estate is a lot of the times those people make so much money, they're very quiet. So they have their guard up just like another client would. Yeah. But it's different. And you start asking them, oh, how's your day? Good. It's very awkward. Yeah. You start trying to be relatable with some of these people, and they're not relatable people because maybe they sit in an office all day and don't talk to anybody. Mm-hmm. But again, their time is valuable. And so that's kind of how I transitioned from, meeting people and being relatable and asking them all of those questions. Where are you from? What do you do? I got away from that, and now I primarily don't do that with anybody because of the luxury market, because I realized a lot of these people don't want to talk about stuff. They want to get straight to business. Yeah. So, and one thing that I've learned is no one's ever not used me because I was all business, right? Because if you want to be likable, people can like you because you enjoy the same things as they do. But if they know that you're a professional and they know that you respect their time, and that they think that you are the absolute only person that should be working for them, they're going to like you then too, right? It may not be because we had a great conversation, but because they had the feeling, hey, I can trust this guy, and I don't think we should use anybody else. So there's different ranges of likable, but I think we're all going to the same place and ending with the same result. It's just a different way of doing it.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. I met a client the other day for a showing in Cherry Creek. It was like $3 million house. And I was trying to relate with them, mm-hmm. and there was nothing. They were like, they live in Cherry Hills. They have a $7 million house they want to sell. So all I'm thinking about is like, okay, I've got to crush this appointment. I want to get this listing right. And so I strategized for like days before the showing, what I'm going to wear. Like, I wanted to be like the best agent ever. Yeah. We got in there, the listing agent's there. This is my first time meeting these people. So there's already this level of like, it's really hard to get to know someone when when you have someone else standing there that's like, you're like, hey, nice to meet you, and the listing agent looks at you like, whoa, you're just meeting this person for the first time, $3 million showing, like, you told me they were ready to buy. Like, because sometimes it's difficult to get into those houses. So I'm trying to get to know them, and it was just like, they kept bringing up like people they know that I should know, like in the real estate industry or things like that, and I'm like, yeah, I think I showed one of their listings or something. It's like as far as I could take it without just, I didn't want to lie to them, and maybe I heard of whoever the agent was, but I never met them or whatever. Yeah, it was interesting. And then when we left, we shook hands, and like, I've never talked to them since then, right? And I followed up, did the things, sent them other properties, tried to provide all the value I could. But in like hindsight, I really, with the other agent being there, I only got like maybe 2 minutes of conversation during that entire showing. And it was tough, but it's I think to the point you're making is like, that price point it's hard. And like, you can't just expect to like claim the lead, show up and get the $7 million listing, right? Like, if someone has lived in Denver for 20 years and they live in Cherry Hills Village, they know some realtors, and the realtors they know are probably badasses, right? So it's how do you become that person to a complete stranger, right? And like you said, it's getting told no, it's getting rejected a couple times, and if you're just playing the numbers, even though you're getting told no 9 of 10 times, that one yes, that one $3 million, $4 million deal makes it worth it, right? And the amount of experience and learning that you're going to get through those rejections, and then the one yes, it's like, you're a different agent at the end of that, right?
Well, how much easier is it for you next time to go into the same situation and just be a little bit more comfortable than you were this time? Yeah. Right? Because I went through the same thing, and it was awkward. And now I'm prepared for situations like that because I know the listing agent's going to be there, and I know I have to go out and meet them at their car away from this listing agent so that I can have a short conversation and prepare them. Hey, the listing agent's here. Please don't say too much. If you end up loving this home as we're walking through it, you can do that, right? But don't give them too much information because it may hurt us in negotiation in the future. Okay? Should it be a possibility, even though it may be a small possibility that you even love this house, right? So let's keep as much as you can to yourself as we're walking through, but we'll let them guide us around, and then we'll chat a little bit after. So, but I developed that from going through it. You show up, same thing, right in front of the listing agent. Oh, nice to meet you. And then they're going, you told me that he was moving from this, and you had all these stories about them. So it never starts well. So I make it a point. I will get there early, and as soon as I see them driving up, I'll tell the listing agent, I'll be right back. I'm going to go meet my client. We'll be back in a minute, right? So then at least when we walk in, also the client's acting as if they know you a little bit more too, because you've had a little short, brief conversation to prepare them, and they're like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And so it at least gives the appearance that we've met before when we haven't. Yeah. Because that can be very difficult. But again, you can't learn anything until you go through and experience those failures and realize, okay, what can I do better next time?
Yeah. I think, too, a lot of times for those showings, you need like a proof of funds or a lender letter or things like that. And you can get past a little bit of those walls they have built. But it is kind of an art to even have that conversation, right? Because there will start turning, and they're like, the listing agent needs this. Okay, so we could just go to the listing agent and probably get this tour, right? Right. Or whatever. So it's... yeah, it's interesting. So you've brought a lot of people onto the team. You've trained a lot of people on the team. And now, we have this new mentorship program. I know you're mentoring a couple people at the moment. Yep. How's that going? How have things changed from how you were doing it maybe in the past?
There's a bit more structure now. Before, when I received somebody, through the mentorship process, it wasn't as streamlined. There was no packet to tell us how to do everything, or even to tell the mentee how to do everything. So it was basically just one-on-one time, and you and I know that we're all busy. So most of it was just conversations on the phone, encouraging, helping people take that next step and actually claim the leads, make the phone calls, set up the emails, doing all of those things. But now that we've built out the mentorship program, there's an entire package that they can go and look at after we onboard them. So they always have a reference point to whatever it is that we're talking about. So it's much different. It's much more structured now, which is good. But also, the people that are being mentored by other mentors, they're getting the same product as the people who I'm mentoring. So from that standpoint, it's going to be better going forward, and certainly more beneficial for the people that we're mentoring to be in the right place, and so that they're going to have the potential to be successful immediately.
Cool. So when I first started, I went through like a training program, and I remember like the training was great, but what really stands out to me over the first few months of being an agent is advice that I got, which I wouldn't call like training. It's like maybe you're having difficulty with something, or you're just thinking about real estate in the wrong way. I think a lot of people don't expect how hard it is in the beginning, or how like emotional it can be. So is there any like advice you got in the beginning that kind of stands out, that ABC, always be closing, whatever it is?
I don't know if there was any advice necessarily from the real estate industry that really clicked with me right away. I think it was just a lot of the experiences that I took through sports and through athletics growing up. And a lot of those lessons that I learned regarding failure. I mean, for example, I was a baseball player. And as if you're 3 for 10, that's a very solid batting average, meaning that out of 10 times you're failing 7 times. And I always considered myself that I pretty good at handling that failure, because I never went up to the plate expecting anything bad to happen. I always assumed I was going to get a hit.
Yeah.
So no matter, I could go 0 for 40, and there was no thought that I could potentially strike out again. I just didn't think that way. So I think mindset is important from that standpoint, and I don't know if anyone is ever going to learn that just by teaching them up front. I think, again, they have to go through the experiences themselves. I can at least communicate, things like that to them, but still no one's ever going to be comfortable with failure until they go through it, and then the next time they respond to it better, and the next time they respond better. But I don't know if you're just not going to learn that by someone telling you. You've got to experience the failures and then figure out how to bounce back and do it differently the next time, and just get better each time you do something, regardless of what it is.
Yeah, that's great advice, honestly. And it's cool that someone didn't necessarily like explain that to you. It's like you figured that out on your own. When we sit down with like a new agent who's interested in coming on the team, I like to ask them like kind of that question, like when something, have you ever failed at something, right? Because everyone's failed at something, in the past. And then how did you bounce back from that?
I think that's a great question.
Yeah. And I think because like every day in real estate, it might not be a failure, but you're getting some sort of like disappointment in some way or another, right? And then you're also managing your client's disappointment in some way or another, right? You're delivering the news, and then you've got to inspire them to keep their head up, to keep moving forward, to keep wanting to buy a house when there were 10 offers on the last house or whatever. Yeah. And then you get home at the end of the day, you've did that for 4 or 5 people, and you may not have a closing, or whatever, and you've got to wake up, you got to go to sleep, you got to wake up the next day and think you're going to get a hit, right?
Yep.
And you probably will, right? If you do that every day, you're going to get some hits, 1 out of 10 times, 2 out of 10 times, you're going to get better. Yeah, that's great advice. Any advice that you give agents you're training? Maybe like advice I got in the beginning was like, hey, everyone that's a part of a real estate transaction their emotions are going to be high.
Yep.
Your buyer's spending a ton of money. The seller raised their kids in this house. The lender hasn't had a closing in a while. You haven't had a closing in a while. The listing agent hasn't had a closing in a while. Everyone needs this deal to get done. But there's going to be a lot of obstacles, and it's going to keep you up at night, right? So the advice I got was like, the more you can kind of keep your emotions out of it and understand that you're there to do a job, and you being emotional about any of it isn't going to help you get to closing. That was like the best advice that I got at the time, because I was real emotional about it, right? I was like, there were times where I was like, mad enough or sad enough, or like, if you like losing offers over and over, and you want to help your client. Maybe you have someone who like really needs to get a house and just getting defeated, and then as soon as I was able to take my kind of emotions out of it, not ever let your clients see your emotions type thing. My wife, she gives me a hard time because I don't show a lot of emotion now, because I've kind of let this bleed over into my personal life, or like I don't talk about real estate to her, right? And she loves to tell me about her day and just like the emotional things she's going through or hearing about, and I'm never doing that, right? Because I've learned to kind of check myself out, because if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to sleep at night, right? And there's still moments where maybe you're negotiating something and it's tough, but that was like the best advice I got. So any advice that you're giving to new agents?
Yeah, and I'll stick on that same subject, about emotion. And you're exactly right. Everybody has emotions involved in it, including yourself. So what I try and get people to focus on, based on those emotions, is focus on the work that you're putting into it. Okay, let's be emotional about that. Am I claiming leads? Am I putting them in the correct category in Boomtown? Am I following up with them properly? Am I doing everything that I can to succeed? And if I am, okay, then I can be excited about that. Okay, regardless of what happens on a daily basis, I can still go home and put your head on the pillow at night and go to sleep, because I know I did everything today that I could, and I know that success is around the corner. Okay, if I'm not doing everything that I can, and I know that deep down, you're going to have that anxiety all the time.
Yeah,
you're going to know that you could be, there are other things that you could be doing, and therefore you're probably not going to make as much money as you should or as you want to. But if you really can say, hey, I did everything I needed to do today in order to be successful, do I have to worry about as much about this closing? No. Okay, I'm going to claim 10 leads this month. Okay, one of those things is going to hit. All I have to do is go through my routine on a daily basis, do everything correctly, and the result's going to take care of itself. So I can leave the emotion out of it for myself, and I can be indifferent about each one of these clients, because I don't need any single client to work out. Okay, if I treat them all with that indifference, they're going to know I'm not desperate. So I'm going to earn more people's trust that I meet. So I'm going to have a higher conversion rate if I can show that level of indifference, that I don't need them. Yeah. And I think the quicker people can get to that mentality and realize, I don't need this specific lead, this one I just took. Well, why is that? Because there's 10 more. And the failure rate on it is probably about 80%. So I know 8 out of 10 of them aren't going to work. Why am I worried that one isn't going to work? Don't need to worry about it. So once you start handling all those leads or opportunities individually with indifference, without desperation, you're inevitably going to get more clients, and then you're going to be more successful in your business. And it's just a lot easier to do business at that point. If you go into everything worried about what's going to happen, you're going to screw it up. And it's like golf. You've played golf? Mm-hmm. You're not good at golf, right?
Not very. We played together, so it wasn't very memorable for you.
Yeah, I think we went one time. But one of the funny things about golf is everybody can putt on the putting green, but you get out on the course and you have a putt for birdie. What's your first thought? Oh, I can't waste this opportunity.
Yeah.
Got to make this putt, and you're like shaking. And inevitably you're going to miss every one of those. If you can get to the point where you've practiced enough, where you're not worried if the putt goes in, you can just make a stroke, pick the line, see the speed, hit the ball. You're not worried whether it goes in or not. You're going to make a lot more putts, and it's the same thing in life. In relationships, period. Yeah. Relationship with your wife, your relationship with your friends. but your relationship with clients are really the same. If you go into that trying not to screw it up, you probably will.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's and a point you made in there was like, you're never gonna be worried if you've done the work.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you've done the right things. You woke up every day, and I think that's like the double-edged sword of real estate. Is like every day you wake up and it's like, okay, what work do I need to do today, right? And Luis made a good point when he was on the podcast. He kind of made the same point that you're just making, is like, once he made the switch to like every day does the same work, right? So every day he's doing his follow-up, making his calls, managing his contracts, he's scheduling showings every day of the week, right? He's doing the same thing, and he's treating it like a job, right? Which I think real estate, the beauty of it is like, you don't have to treat it like a job. You can wake up and go skiing, and then, you know, maybe you make some calls when you get back to Denver. But if you can, like you said, do the right work, you're prepared no matter what, you're going to be busy. You're going to have a ton of business. And the clients that are stressing you out aren't going to stress you out, right? Because you have 4 other clients that are, you know, either under contract or they're out shopping. You know, you have a client that you lose an offer on, but you get an offer accepted for a different client, right? So it's like, hey guys, no luck on this one. I got another buyer under contract today. They were in the similar situation. They offered on a few houses, but feeling good about the next one, right? We'll go find something you like more. You're able to inspire because you're getting inspired, even though you might be getting defeated as well in some areas. Cool. That's great advice. It's so funny, like the theme of like all the podcasts have been very similar when I'm like asking people how to be successful in real estate. It's just like, do the work, like be a good person, be honest, right? And that's kind of the things I've always thought about. And not the honesty part, but the work part is what I've always struggled with, I think, in like being disciplined. I like to travel. I like the work-life balance, but you know, if my business is ever suffering, I can look at the past 2 months and I can tell you exactly why, right? It's because for 2 weeks I didn't make a call. You know, and I had people that were maybe on the fence or whatever. I didn't follow up with them. And then when I do my follow-up, I can really tell you what happened because they tell me, hey, didn't hear from you. We ended up buying a house. And then now I know, and over time, I've gotten way better at being consistent because I don't like those phone conversations where it's like, hey, just checking in on your home search. Oh, we bought a house. Didn't hear from you. And then you're just like, wow. You know, if I would have just sat down for 2 hours out of the past 2 months and made my calls, I'd have another closing right now. Right? Cool. So anything you're excited about for this year?
Just the curiosity of what the market's going to do, what interest rates are going to do, what our supply is going to look like, you know, the next 8 months.
What do you think is going to happen?
A lot of questions. I don't know. You know, and I've never liked to, you know, inject my opinions into the real estate conversation, right? There are so many experts out there and so much data that we can look to, you know, to gain a knowledge of what's going on. So, and all I can do is rely on the facts and what's happening, right? But the funny thing about the Denver market is it's been predictable for the last 8 years. You know, take away 2020, and we've been able to pretty much tell people, hey, here's what's going to happen in April, here's what's going to happen in October, here's what we can expect at the first of the year, right? That's a little bit different right now. You know, we haven't had interest rates at the levels that they are, so there's a lot more of a challenge on predicting anything, or, you know, it's really on a weekly basis right now. So all I can do is look to last week and see how the market's changing and go from there. But you know, we have a supply problem, and I think we're going to continue to have that. That's no secret there. So as far as, you know, the Denver market goes, it's going to be continue to be strong for homeowners. Okay, if you own a home, you're in a great spot. If you don't own a home, you need to. And I think that's the main point in real estate in Denver right now. If you haven't bought a home already, you should be buying one now. And then we can worry about the consequences of that later, which we all know what the consequences are, and that's happiness and people, you know, building a future. So
Yeah, I don't like to tell clients this, but it's something I think about often. Is almost every client I've ever worked with has had the same thought about the market of like, when's it going to go down? Like, or they might say, we were thinking about waiting until the market, shifts back. And it's so funny, this fall, the market did slow down. It did shift. It did become a buyer's market for a little bit. So we still didn't have the inventory, but things weren't moving very quickly. Right. Buyers were getting, all their inspection items addressed, discounts on price, all that stuff. But no one wanted to buy when it was a buyer's market, right? It's like you have 100 people that said they're waiting, and you hit up all 100 people like, hey, this is the time you were talking about, right? Yeah. It's finally the time.
But interest rates are too high.
Well, what do you think makes a buyer's market, right? It's like either our inventory has to go way, way up. Some sort of miracle has to happen for that to happen, I think. Or there's going to be other factors, right? We're going into a recession, the economy's tanking, interest rates are higher. Something's happening for it to become a good time to buy when you have a low inventory environment like we have. And no one was like, yeah, this is it, let's go. Like, no one said that, Yeah. And I've got some buyers right now that, like, it is getting better out there, right? Interest rates are going down, inventory's going up a little bit, as it does, very seasonal here in our market. And it's tough. I've had some listings lately that, 3 days on market. I got one under contract yesterday, $22,000 above list price. We had 3 offers, and it was easy. Like, it was like you said, put it on the MLS. I did a lot of marketing stuff that I've been doing over the past few months, but I don't know if I needed to do that, to sell this house. Like, we had people offer and then resubmit offers, right? Like, it was a bid war for the most part. But for my buyers right now, it's pretty tough, depending on the price range. I've been struggling to describe the market, I guess. And it's weird, and like you said, you got to just look at the data and the facts. We have low inventory. Our average days on market is progressively going down. Our median days on market is going down. Is it part of the season? I think so. What's going to happen the rest of the year? I don't know. It's you almost don't want to answer that question.
Yeah, and there's truth in it. Yeah, you're honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I could sit here like everybody else and say, oh, well, here's what's going to happen. Why? Okay, no one knows what's going to happen right now. We haven't experienced this. People that have been in real estate for 30 years that think they know, they don't know. Nobody knows. And there's truth in that, and I think clients respect that answer.
Yeah.
Okay, over the last 8 years, I've been able to tell you what's going to happen in May. Right now, I can't.
Yeah.
We're going to learn together. We're going to figure it out, right? Then I think the specifically is each listing is different. You mentioned you have a listing that you got 3 offers on. It was easy, and I've had the same experience. We had one, about a month ago that we had 30 offers on and sold for $60,000 above list price.
Wow.
Okay, we listed one the very next week that's been on the market for 35 days, and it took us 35 days to get it under contract.
Yeah.
Okay, we had to drop price one time. So each experience through each different listing and different neighborhood can be different right now, and I think that everybody just has to be prepared that there is going to be competition if they find the home that they love. Because if you love it, there's probably someone else that loves it too, and there just aren't a lot of homes right now. So be ready.
I say that verbatim to my clients, right? If you love it, someone else is going to love it.
Yep.
And I mentioned a story of success. I also had 2 listings go on the market the first week of January, and they just closed, right? So like they were both on the market over 30 days. And I think that's like the nature of this time of year, but like they were priced well. We did do price reductions on both of them. And then once we did go under contract, we had multiple offers.
Right.
So like, makes no sense, right? And that's why, like you said, it's I do think clients respect that of like they're looking for an expert, but sometimes like they need someone who's like I could sit here and sound like an expert and regurgitate a bunch of stuff that doesn't isn't necessarily true. And I think it's way more valuable for your client to to be honest versus act like you're an expert, right? I mean, I think both of us have been doing real estate long enough and have done enough deals that we could sit here and confidently say we're experts on real estate, right? But sometimes the expert thing to say is I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think for like especially a new agent, it's really hard for a new agent to say I don't know. Right, and every new agent, for the most part, has a moment where they really put their foot in their mouth. And when you're helping a new agent, it's like, you know, you're not going to know the answer to a lot, right? So the first kind of skill that a lot of people learn is how to say I don't know, but let me find out for you, right? Or hey, I don't want to give you the wrong answer. Let me call you back in about 30 minutes and I'll have all the information, right? And then they call you, right? And they say, hey, Gavin, what's the market going to be like in 6 months? And you tell them the right thing to say, right? Which sometimes is like, you don't know. Cool. So one question I've been asking everyone to kind of change the tone a little bit. So we're out showing homes all the time, right? And what's the weirdest or craziest thing you've seen on a showing?
On a showing, I could tell a lot of good listing stories.
Okay. Showing up to a listing appointment type thing?
Well, it was an experience in a listing. You know, I initially when I started in real estate, I was always a big fan of the TV shows on what channel are all those?
HGTV?
Yeah, HGTV, right? And I was always like, man, I want to have my own show.
Okay.
And being the listing specialist or listing director at iHomes, obviously having a ton of experiences in some questionable houses, right? Saw a lot of weird things, but I always wanted to have this TV show, and I was like, I'm going to have a TV show called Disaster Listing.
Okay.
So people could see all the things that we have to go through as listing agents and all the things that go wrong. Like, it's not like what you see on HGTV where everybody's happy all the time. But I had a client that they were a buy-sell. And so we got them under contract on a purchase that was contingent upon their home selling. Okay. So they're under contract on a purchase. Well, that seller was contingent upon a purchase that they were making. And so that transaction had a contingency attached to it too. So overall, there were about 6 agents that I had to keep in contact with. And at the time, I felt like I was the only one that was capable of managing all of the emotions for 6 different agents. So they kind of put me in charge of updating everybody every day. Well, that week, if you remember in Firestone, when the oil and gas well exploded and the house blew up, that was right across the street from the home that my buyer was purchasing.
Okay.
So first thing they do is call me and say, is the neighborhood safe? What do you think I said? And what can you say to somebody at that point? The house just exploded and people passed away, unfortunately, in that explosion. So they're about to move into a neighborhood that they're going, I mean, is our house going to blow up? I mean, so having to navigate that situation, I think, was probably the craziest real estate story that I've had. We ended up closing, albeit it took about 120 days to get through the process of them figuring out, is this neighborhood safe? So Anadarko had to go in there and clean up the neighborhood and put their stamp on it and say, okay, we've mitigated the problem. Everything is going to be fine. No other homes are going to explode. So that was a pretty unique experience, and I still have experiences every week where I'm like, that's new. But that's probably the craziest real estate experience I've had. And we got all 6 transactions closed, albeit it was an emotional 3 months. I had people yelling at me every day. Every single day, and from all different sides of the transaction. And I'm over here, hey, don't worry, we're going to get this closed. It's not a matter of if, it's when, right? So everybody, it ended up working out well for everybody, so I can say that. But so it's been good since then.
Nice.
But
so I think HGTV has a show like that now. not necessarily from the agent perspective, I guess, which I think would be more entertaining. It's very different from the kind of facade they show for agents. It's not all rainbows and butterflies. HGTV actually called me on Friday, and so this is the second time I've heard from them. I helped a buyer buy a house that's on Zillow Gone Wild. Have you seen the Instagram Zillow Gone Wild where they post like all the crazy listings that hit the market?
Yep.
And the show is called like America's Horrible Houses. And they're like, hey, can you call your client and see if they want to be on the show? And I'm like, yes, I will. And I've heard from you guys before, and I've called him before. However, he loves this house. Like, if you tell him it's horrible, he's not going to want to go on your show. Like, he loves the carpet on the walls. It's a crazy looking house for sure. It's in the middle of nowhere in Burlington. I had to drive 3 hours to go show it the first time. And he bought it sight unseen. I like made a video and like tried to send it to him, and he's like, no, I want it. Like, he's like, you don't even have to drive out there. Like, I'm like, cool. I'm going to drive out there and make sure it's not like falling over. I was like a bowling alley inside of it. It's like the kitchen's wrapped in real zebra leather. Like, everything is like zebra. It's pretty wild.
Does he plan on updating it at all, or is he into that?
No, he loves it. Yeah,
he said carpet on the walls.
There's carpet on the walls. It's red carpet on the walls, and all in the master bath, all the fixtures are black. So there's a black toilet, black bathtub, sinks. Everything is black, and it's red carpet. It's a very unique house, and he loves it. But HGTV is like, "You're gonna win. We'll remodel your house for you if you win." And he's like, "Dude, no way." He
Leave the '70s shag carpet. I love it.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We'll have to have you back in a few months once the market's changed or not. I think we got some really good advice and insights today. But if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We've got a lot more podcasts coming soon. See you in the next one.